The man in your life harbors deep feelings, so deep that he barely knows they're there, much less how he can even talk about them. Shanti Feldhahn is a relationship expert. After interviewing thousands of men, she discovered some eye-opening revelations every woman should know. In her book For Women Only, Shanti shares what's really going on in your man's head and how to love him for who he really is.
A yeoman's task. Please welcome back to the 700 Club, Shanti Feldhahn. It's great to have you back.
It's good to be back.
You first wrote For Women Only in 2004. What made you decide to update this?
You know, it's interesting. We've been doing this now, this research for 10 years, and learning all this stuff even after we put the book out, you know, and just the research is ongoing. I mean, I always say, heaven help the poor man who's stuck next to me on an airplane for 2 hours. But, you know, it's interesting. About a year and a half ago, my husband and I were doing a marriage conference, and we walked off stage, and we kind of looked at each other and said, you know, like a third of what we just said isn't even in the book. We've learned so much. There's so many more important things we wanted to add.
And once you do something like this, everybody wants to come up and share their experience, their story.
There were so many cool things that needed to be updated, including, by the way, we now know why so many of these things are the way they are. It used to be that I would just say, well, here's what men are thinking. I can't tell you why. And now the brain science has advanced a lot. We know why in a lot of cases.
Well, you talk about that a little bit, because God made us so different as men and women. Yeah, really. And talk a little bit about what the difference is between how men process and express thought and feelings, and as opposed to a woman.
You know, this is one of the new chapters that we put in For Women Only and For Men Only, both of which are updated. And this is one of the things we learned, like, whoa, the differences lead to all this conflict that doesn't have to be there. Because we often think that, you know, when you're in the middle of a tussle and like it's an emotional evening or something, and he just wants to go down to his workshop and he just wants to pound something, and you're like, but tell me what you're thinking, and you just want to work it out. And you often think he's just trying to avoid the problem. He just doesn't care. He doesn't want to talk. And usually it's the opposite. They do want to be able to engage, but the way the male brain is wired, they need time to actually be able to think it through. Like I would tell my husband, you know, what are you thinking? And he's like, I don't know what I'm thinking. How can you not know what you're thinking? But the way the male brain is wired, literally, they have to go deep and do this internal chess match and figure out, okay, this is what I'm thinking here, but then this has to happen here. And then they can come back and talk about it. But usually, if you try to force that, it's just like this deer in the headlights thing. You will get so much better communication.
So give space.
If you give time. Literally time, literally. Like a few hours.
Okay, oh good. I thought we were talking maybe years.
No. Well, sometimes it may be a couple of days, depending on how big the issue is.
Let's cut to the chase and talk about one of the most interesting chapters in the book. That would be chapter 7, where you talk...
no, you're not going to do this to me, Terry.
Okay. Answer the question of why it's so difficult for men not to look at other women.
Okay. This is very specific in this very difficult culture we're in, where we're talking about how some women dress in a way that it's everywhere. And it draws overt attention to a good figure. That's specifically what we're talking about, not just anybody.
Women in general.
Right, yeah. And it's the stuff that men are confronted with that, according to the Bible anyway, they were never supposed to be confronted with. The only woman a man was ever supposed to see in that way was going to be his wife, right? You know? And that was supposed to be a good thing. Because here's what happens. It turns out that there's a wiring in the male brain that's very different from us as women, where when they see that image, it's like this part of the brain lights up that's the same part of the brain that, you know that feeling when you walk into a room and you haven't eaten all day and there's food across the room, and it's like, ugh, like you're just drawn to that. It's not a thought at all. It's just, you know, drawn to it. It's a biological reaction. That's the same thing that happens when a man sees that image that he was never supposed to have to see. And that part of his brain lights up, and he views it very sexually, and it's not something he wants. And most men I talk to, they instantly are like, okay, stop it, don't think about that. But because they see that kind of stuff in so many places, they're constantly having to do this take every thought captive thing.
And talk about it from the other side, because my experience in talking to young women today is that when they dress in what they think is attractive, they're not understanding what it's generating inside a man. Their intention is not that that should ever produce any kind of activity with someone.
Right, no. Actually, we did the research for young women only. We're talking to the men and vice versa for the teenage books. And we actually found that for the teenage girls, when they dress that way, I think the numbers was like 90%. It was a very large number. They're just trying to wear what's in style and feel good about themselves.
Or be admired. But it's like, look at me, but don't touch me.
Well, and see, here's the reason why they don't get the male reaction is because when a woman sees an attractive man, that part of their brain that I was just talking about stays dark. And they think to themselves instead, it's this thought process like, oh, he's an attractive guy. Yeah. But that they don't know what that gut level, biological, automatic visual temptation is like for a guy, because they've never experienced it.
I want to have you talk about the top 5 responses from men that you surveyed. Yeah. Number 5 was, I need her to understand my burden to provide.
Yeah, we actually gave the men, this was at the very end of the survey, and we picked all the subjects that they had said were important. And then we said, you know, blank space, what's the one most important thing you wish your wife knew? And so the 5th one on the list was this subconscious, always there in the back of the mind. How am I going to provide for my family?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, number 4 was, I need more sex. A lot of women would have said that's not number 1.
Yeah, right, exactly. You know, we actually found this was an emotional need for a man, even more than a physical one, to feel desired by his wife.
Number 3 was, I need more respect in private and public.
Yeah, 3 out of 4 men on the survey said they would actually give up feeling loved. Wow. If they could just feel respected.
Interesting, considering that the admonition to women in Scripture is to respect your husband.
Never says in that whole big long passage on marriage. Yeah. It never says love your husband there.
Okay, number 2, I wish she'd make more of an effort to take care of herself.
Yeah, well, that's a hot potato. I was really surprised.
Number 2 on the list.
Yeah, the men said that it's almost like when she makes an effort to take care of herself, I feel like she cares about me.
Wow.
And it's because probably of that visual nature.
And this was surprising to me. Number 1, ladies, listen to this. I want her to know how much I love her.
Yeah. This was more than double the next nearest response. It was by far the top response, and I realized how much goodwill the men have towards us.
So with all the research that you've done, Shanti, and all the people that you've talked to, where are we making our biggest mistakes? Where are we falling most short of the mark?
You know, honestly, I think one of the biggest things is that we don't realize that we really are just so different, and we're trying real hard, and we don't realize that we're trying hard in the wrong areas. And sometimes we're hurting him rather than showing him how much we love him. And we would never intend to. We just need to know a few of these little things.
Yeah. And do you think sometimes that it's every man for himself, like everybody in the relationship is looking to get what they want out of it without realizing if you give the other person some of the things they need, you get what you need?
Well, that's called selfishness, right? I mean, we've all got a little of that.
In all of us.
Well, you know, I've been very, very impressed over these last 10 years of doing this research at the reaction to the book. I think I don't know if you knew this, it's in 22 different languages. Wow. I mean, all over the world. And
so
one
men
of the
and women
reasons,
are universally
yes, but one of the reasons is that they see, whoa, I really can understand this other person, as opposed to just shutting down and thinking, I just might as well not try.
Yeah. Well, we've just scratched the surface of Shanti's research. If you'd like to know more about the inner lives of men, get a copy of her book. It's called For Women Only. This is available, by the way, wherever books are sold. Thank you so much. It's always fascinating. Come back when you've done more research.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.